Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning back in to the Birth Exchange podcast. I am your girl, Midwife Christine, and we are about to have a really important conversation, y'all. All of our conversations have been important, but today, we're going to get into something really, really deep, all right? I am here with a BBG dad times 2, times forever, Johnny Alexander.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You are a licensed clinical social worker.
Yes, that I am.
Please tell our audience who you are, what you do, and let's get into some things.
So I'm Johnny. Currently, I'm a private practice owner of Elevated Genius Solutions, in which I specialize or mainly work with families, teen, adolescents, and young adults, mainly males. I have one trans client, trans masculine. So I guess you can add that to like the things that I do.
Okay.
But the vast majority of all the people or kids that I see are neurodivergent, which means they either are autism spectrum, ADHD, anxiety, depression, anything that they may have that makes them, I guess, not neurotypical, or any emotional struggles that they may have is what I see in teens and adolescents. But my main focus is helping them maximize who they are, become the person that they're intended to be. And I do that in a number of different ways, depending on how I interact. So also my practice is kind of like non-traditional. I don't operate from an office. I go to where you are, or a neutral location. So actually we're in an area where I do some of my sessions. I actually do some sessions at the Battery. I've done some at Bad Daddy's up the street, to the point where people kind of know me when I show up. I actually got a shameless plug from Hooters the other day.
Okay.
Because I go there, I play games, I do whatever to engage with them, but I also work with the entire family. So I do one-to-one kind of therapeutic mentorship with the kids, and then I do parent coaching with the parents, and then I also do some family sessions.
Hello, parent coaching. That's why we're here.
Because that's where
Okay, let's break this down, okay? Because you have families and individuals who they may not already know that they need some sort of help, some sort of therapy to get through some emotional challenges, right? Traumas, etc. There are so many different types of mental health therapists. So how would a regular person who knows they want to seek assistance, right? Who do they look for? What type of therapist would a person look for?
Well, I think first is identifying a different type of people that provide, I guess, talk therapy or counseling, right? Because that's the basis of what we think of, and that's the place to start. Often, sometimes people might skip to thinking, now that I have mental health issues, let me go see a psychiatrist and start the medication process. And sometimes I advise against that, because people might get medication but not get the therapy to support that.
Right.
And not getting psychoeducation, the medication management, or the tools to manage and maintain, so they become reliant on medication.
So what do? Google therapist?
So they Google therapist. I think a good place to start is Psychology Today. It's very common.
Okay.
It's easy to navigate. It's universal, so whoever is looking for what they're looking for, and then you might find yourself coming across, I guess, 3 major titles or letter backgrounds. So you have your LCSWs, which is a licensed clinical social worker. Specific to that comparison to a licensed master social worker is that I'm able to, I guess, govern myself. I don't need any immediate supervision. I've gone the testing, the licensing to, if I provide a diagnosis, it's supported, and that falls on me. So if there's any mistakes in that, there's any liability, I'm the person that's accountable or responsible. It also allows me at some point in time to provide supervision. So LMSW will be a person that is kind of fresh out of school. They pass their licensing exam. They're in the practice of providing therapy, but they need some oversight or supervision.
Okay.
And so therefore you might also go to LMSW. Doesn't mean that they're less qualified, but they're still having some oversight, which might be beneficial, because they can go to their supervisor and talk about a specific case and get insight. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. So in the field of social work, you have LMSWs, you have your LCSWs. Licensed clinical social workers are fully licensed. LMSWs are kind of junior licensed or associate licensed, and they have to be supervised. And then you have your LPCs, your licensed professional counselors, which provide more talk-based therapy as well. I think what differentiates social workers from professional counselors is, don't misspoke, because I know sometimes there's some kind of back and forth between social workers and counselors, but I was told to go into social work because it's more versatile. I worked in community healthcare clinics, and so at the time I went to the CEO was also like an aunt to me. And I was like, would you help me pay for school? I'm thinking about going to school for counseling. It's like, we'll go to school for social work because of the versatility. And so, for instance, I used to work in HIV, and we do a lot of trainings in HIV, and a lot of the trainers, their supervisors were social workers. clinical social workers. You'll be in a community healthcare clinic or a clinic in general, and you might have a social worker, licensed clinical social worker that runs your mental health department. There's admin duties. So not everything within a social worker has to be one-to-one directly clinical. So that's one thing that for those who are seeking the profession or want to know which way to go, that's something to consider, that there's a little bit more versatility in social work than just providing direct one-to-one counseling. Counselors, I think, is more so on counseling and providing therapy or talk therapy in that regard.
Okay.
And I know they have associate licensed counselors as well. I don't know if it works the same as that they're able to provide counseling and need supervision, but I believe it's a similar situation.
So they probably wouldn't know who they might need until they reach out to someone.
Yes.
And be directed and steered into
if
the
you
direction.
In your search and you've run across an LMFT, LPC, a social worker, for the most part, if you're just general search, those would be good looks for you. I mean, even some psychologists now that they have more extensive means of education, sometimes they have more research-based backgrounds, so they might do more of the intensive assessments. And so, for instance, like if I see signs of a kid having ADHD, I might refer them and say, let's go get them a psych evaluation to further determine what that looks like, and then we start the process of IEP, 504, or whatever that might look like.
Got it.
Also, for more developmental-based mental health issues, things that are more intense and need really intensive testing, that you might get a PhD or a PsyD or a psychiatrist, and then you have a psychiatrist. And one we forgot is the LMFTs, the licensed marriage and family therapists.
So I'm going to be real. This sounds very confusing.
Of course.
Which is unfortunate, because it's kind of like if I'm in a crisis, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Or at a limit. I don't know. There's so many different options. I don't know, like, who to start off with.
I mean, well, it's partially.
Do you start off with a counselor or a social worker, or do you start off with a psychologist? Like,
I think start off with a counselor or social worker.
So that might be a barrier, I think, probably,
yeah,
right?
Definitely, or just a means of understanding.
Therapy.
Or it can be intimidating when you look at all these, letters. Right? And what do they mean? So again, LMFT, licensed marriage and family therapists, like that. I think they gear more towards like couples and things of that sort, which I don't do, but that may be what it is. So, and then sometimes if you know specifically what you're looking for, which can be confusing for the layperson, right? I'm stressed. What does that mean? Do I have anxiety? Is it situational? Is it generational? What does that look like? How do I go about it? Is it post-traumatic stress? Is it due to trauma? So the first thing I think is just to start looking for someone.
Got it.
And going through your selection process and sitting with, because beyond the letters, it also comes down to a goodness of fit.
Absolutely.
And so oftentimes I think what really steers people away, that taking the next step to actually seek somebody out, is it's not a good fit. And not knowing how to either communicate that or not knowing how to navigate that. And so then what do you do? Because like you said, I'm in crisis. Because it's seldom that people are like, oh, I'm feeling great today, let me go see my therapist. Which is what you should do.
Right, correct.
But oftentimes when a person starts their journey of seeking out therapy, it's typically in a crisis, or they're noticing, some inconsistencies in their life.
Okay, so that's a good segue. Okay, so you do work with adults and men, right? And you're here because I wanted to talk to you specifically about the support around dads and their transition into fatherhood, parenthood, and what that looks like and why. There's just so many questions I have.
Go. Ask away.
First of all, I wonder why, and maybe you can help us understand why there's such a lack of resources and support for dads when it comes to childbirth.
Because, it's childbirth, right?
Okay, yeah.
And so when you speak of childbirth, the act of bearing a child, who's the focus?
Mommy.
The mother. Noticeably so, because there's, a lot of risk factors that they have. The physical aspect of bearing a child undeniably is something that we can't fathom. And so therefore, I think in a lot of instances, we get disregarded in that place. But I'll tie into why I see families, right? See a kid, everything's all good. I get my man's tools. He knows how to cope, advocate for himself, all that. But he goes home and it's ridiculous. They're not supporting the things that you've done, right? They're not, they don't have the language or the tools or the resources. It's not a parallel process.
Yeah.
So I think firstly, we have to change how we view even now, this is acceptance of, single parent households, even even now is trying to help people navigate how to govern two households. Okay, regardless of what y'all feel about each other personally, you have a child that y'all need to, raise to be a solid human being, not just to be acceptable or be good at home or be good at school. I emphasize that we're raising people to be in the world, and we need to raise better people to have a better world, right? And so I think it's changing that philosophy.
I like that.
If we look at the aspect of, and I see firsthand when it comes to supporting, I didn't know what I was supposed to do, but I knew that I needed to do something. And we all laugh, I think, in regards to like helping my wife breathe.
Yes.
Now, given that was something I kind of digged in regards to, in therapy, for those who use those type of practices, controlled breathing is a thing in a therapeutic setting. And so the fact that we didn't apply that to, in the birthing space and really sitting there and I'm like, yo, like, did you really forget to breathe or how to breathe? But something as simple as that. So how do we as, husbands, fathers, partners provide that means of support? Why? Because it then adds more to the benefit of the child and the mother.
I love how you said we have to reframe how we think of childbirth. Because when you think of childbirth, you do just predominantly, obviously, just think of the mom experiencing birth. But there's also this separation and isolation, if you will, of the mom. Because no one's thinking, like, you can go into the hospital room and the couple comes together and it's like, Dad, can you leave the room? They're asking the dad to leave the room so they can do things, different procedures and different, it's ridiculous. But you're right. Like, it's not viewed as a family-centered or family-centric, event.
Yeah, and I think especially amongst us. I think now because of the stigma, is the expectation that a woman is bearing a child on their own.
By herself.
And it's like, that's ridiculous to think of because, it was fun to make it, but it took another person. Right? And so it's almost as that we're promoting some of these things that happen. And so a lot of mental health is unlearning what it is that you knew. Right? Because, for instance, I'm, creating curriculum for parents called No Blueprint. And that's one of the things I tell my parents, especially neurodivergent parents. There is no blueprint.
Yeah.
It's like, and I had a kid one time even to reinforce confidence. It's like, there's 7 billion people in the world that are all innately different. Right? But yet we all trying to build carbon copies. How does that make sense? It doesn't. So therefore, a lot of things that get passed on don't necessarily apply. So think about just parenting in general.
Yeah.
We just do what our parents did. And what's comical to me is, especially in the aspect of discipline in the Black household, is, I came out okay. It baffles me that being okay is the standard you want for your child, right? Like, no, we want them to be better. We want them to be great.
Right.
So it's unlearning that mindset as to why that is in regards to that. It's a societal standard in which we position or prop up men to be a certain way. To where it's not that we don't have feelings or even have conversations.
Okay. Because I want to talk about that.
Yeah. It's the fact that, where do we have those spaces and can we do that in a space that doesn't question
manhood,
whatever that is, or masculinity, whatever that is. Right? And
right. Because that's the thing, men don't usually go around, voicing their feelings or saying I'm afraid. What's happening? I'm nervous about A, B, or C, or I don't know about that. You know what I mean? But I'm supposed to be your protector and your provider and you know what I'm saying, in this space of childbirth, when that is not typically something that's taught or talked about or any of that.
Yeah. It's just, again, we are so bound to societal standards and norms that we ourselves just become, proponents of continuously, I guess, perpetuating bad habits, right?
Yeah, right.
And so again, until we change that mindset of how we approach it and look at it as a team perspective, not even an aspect of the nature of the relationship, right? Forget that. Married, not, baby daddy, side, whatever. Situationship.
Yes.
Okay, now you're here. We know how babies are made, right? Now we're here. What do we do collectively to support the betterment of this child? Simply. And so if I have a thing with therapy in general, you can't pour from an empty cup. But I think men are expected to always be cup half empty. And we don't know how to do it. Or we have limited language in how we express emotion. And so when we're having emotional moments, we push people away because we only know anger, aggression, assertiveness, all things that we attach to masculinity. I had to start getting to the point where I'm telling my wife, like, no, you hurt my feelings. That made me sad. It made me question myself. It affected my confidence, my sense of well-being, which took me, going to school to learn the language and going counseling myself. But again, I'm teaching young guys nah, she broke your heart. You're sad, bro. You just went through a breakup. You're supposed to
They can't verbalize that.
No, or we only do it one way. And so if you think about it, especially in urban communities, the angry cry, right? The kid, he wants to get in a fight. I was so mad I was crying. Nah, you was upset. You was embarrassed. Expand your vocabulary. I even had a kid as of late where I was giving him some consequences doing wall sits. I know his legs are starting to burn. He was crying. I'm like, well, why are you crying? What made you upset? Your legs burn? He's like, no, I was embarrassed. So let's unpack that. What does that mean? What does embarrassment look like to you? Because even if you think about from a man's perspective and saying, I don't know, or what do I do? How do I help is embarrassing because we're supposed to know everything.
Okay, so you're supposed to know everything. That's what society says.
Don't misquote me. I don't think it's enough for me. But it's kind of an expectation, right?
So, but let's put that into the perspective of a dad expecting a baby, such as yourself. You're expecting your second baby.
Yes.
But even when you're expecting your first baby, how do you? What are dads to do when they don't know anything about childbirth? You know what I'm saying? How does the dad, if he's not seeking ways and methods to support, right? How are dads to navigate this space they're in that's a space they don't know anything about?
Well, I mean, traditionally, we kind of deal with it as we've done. But again, as you continue to build up those barriers, you become kind of, I call it emotionally constipated, right? You get built up, then you express it negatively in different instances. How it's manifested within myself is because, again, now you're raising a small person, an aspect of, discipline or getting them to do what you want to do. And from a place of restraint, because it's like, nah, I'm not just beating my child because that's what y'all did to make you okay. It's like, well, I got to be creative. And I've had times where I've raised my voice or gotten impatient or frustrated. And I'd apologize. I'm sorry, Teague. I didn't mean to take it there. To where I start getting more creative with things I don't even give to my guys. I'm sitting with Teague and trying to do controlled breathing. A lot of it for me is the non-tangible or physical things to help and support. With the first child, I could tell distinctly, one of the pivotal moments that we had was the late nights. And we my wife used to covet naps. So we
yes.
we value
We're
sleep.
nap queens.
Yeah, we definitely value sleep.
Yes.
And so we in the bed and this is a whole new thing. We got this little person in the bed with us.
Not letting you sleep.
And it's she would get up and she would respond, and also just ways that we defer to the wife. What am I supposed to do right now? Especially you're breastfeeding. I can't take your boob and help the child. So what do I do in this instance? And I remember her was just the things that y'all know instinctually. Yeah. Again, me just being logical was you bared this person for 9 months. Of course you're gonna have a different level of attachment. I need for you to tell me, or at least give me insight. And I remember her getting up and she's like, why don't you get up? You don't ask you. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I said, be patient with me and extend some grace because I don't have the same instincts as you. Now, given my education and vocabulary, I think that's why I was able to have the conversation the way I did. Pretty sure those alls don't happen that way.
So those are conversations that should happen before you have the baby gets here. Because that middle of the night fatigue and you're sleeping and getting good sleep and I'm up, my boobs hurt, this child is nursing and all the things and you're sleeping, that's all she can see. And it's dude, I'm going to need you to sit up and stare at me while I'm up too.
I mean, the meme of wanting to punch us in the face because we're enjoying our rest.
That part.
We got it. And it's well, I don't know any different.
What else to do?
So I'm waking up just to ask so you could tell me no. So I can go back to sleep.
Okay. So but it's a two-way street.
And I inquired. And that was something even within our relationship that I think is a simple concept that we don't think about. Just ask. And to stop assuming that I got it because I just go through things as I'm accustomed to. Are you okay? So with the first child, there was a lot of us learning ourselves. And so we started doing check-ins.
Got it.
Well, how are you? What do you need? There's even a concept I've seen, I think on IG that I love about relationships aren't necessarily 50-50 or sometimes it's 80-20.
Sure.
And so I might have to cover that 20%, because 80%, especially in initial childbirth, right, where there's a lot of dependency and attachment to the child. And especially with first-time mothers, that I think go to the extent like they want to extend that connection for however long.
Right.
So we still getting Tika out of our bed. If she sees this, it is what it is. But, that level of attachment, engagement, right, to where I had to wait for certain shifts.
Sure.
Also understanding that we have different relationships with said child. So I don't feel any type of way now when she's like, last night was like, I want daddy to sleep with me. Then was like, no, I want mommy. I'm like, ooh, I'm tired.
And that's an important concept for breastfeeding, right? You can't feed the baby. You know that you can't feed the baby. Mom knows that she has to feed the baby if she's nursing, if she's breastfeeding. So knowing each other's role and part in that, right? And accepting it for what it is and then picking it up somewhere else.
I mean, and so the first, and I think only person that gave her actual bottle was me. And then the dope exchange that Tegan and I have had was figuring it out in mom's absence. So like mom went away and again, getting better at communicating language and how you're feeling, and she had a full-fledged meltdown. And again, me observing this as an adult professional, I'm like, once they're committed, they're committed. There's no like changing that mindset, stopping. My child is not going, well, unless it's something they want. They're full-fledged crying, but you want an ice pop or a pony? Yeah, but like, she was committed to this meltdown. And I said, you're upset because mommy's gone, huh? She's like, yes. I was like, so you're just overwhelmed, you don't know what to do? No. We laid on the floor and she cried until we fell asleep in a pile of clothes.
Wow.
But that was a growth moment. So even within, our relationship, again, as she's weaning her off the boob and now I'm able to share some of the responsibility.
Sure.
It's not solely on her. There's actually things that I can do, is figuring out what that looks like and how to navigate that for ourselves, right? Like, and so even when it's coming through like, okay, you're tired, she's been crying, she's not listening, I'll take over, let me rock her to sleep. Give her we call it
and that's
shoulder.
when the flexibility comes in. I think that a lot of moms or couples may not think that there are phases with this thing. There are phases that it's going to look one way one day and 2 weeks later it might look another way. Or 3 months later it might look this way. But they're just phases that you're going in and out of constantly. There's these different transitions, in which your role might look different.
Yep. And also, I think part of the grace that you give is allowing each parent to figure it out. I've had adamant times I'm like, let her cry. We have to go through this. Because then you become rescuing, and if your issue is that you're trying to differentiate the attachment, so she goes to both parents, there's, a give and a take of that. Now, and also how much you trust your partner.
That.
Because at some point in time, again, if you're going to lay with this man or woman and, bear a child, then part of what you give them or allow them to do is a byproduct of how you trust your partner.
And that's hard when you have a new baby and it's all new to everybody. I don't know if I can trust you with my new baby.
Oh, I mean...
You know what I mean? Like, my man or not. I don't know if I can trust you because you never had a baby. But all. Look at me, and I never had a baby. But I'm looking at you like you the ops because...
You had him for 9 months. It didn't cost you. You didn't bled. You didn't cry.
I don't know what you can do and what you can't
different. Things is not hanging how they used to.
And if you're not going to do it my way or the way I do it, then I'm not going to let you do it at all. And there's no space or room for you to do that.
But then let's talk about how that affects the man's mental health. You want me to do stuff, but you only want me to do it your way. We're a partnership. We have different skills and abilities and talents that we bring to the table. That's the only way in which we thrive. If we're both the same individuals, where's the growth? There is none. So again, you have to question yourself, did you make a good choice in your partner? So we can trust them. And we get to the point where, my wife used to be like, oh, I'm not letting you take her out until 2, 3, 4, 4 years old. All right, cool. You work from home. I got flexibility in my days. So it got to the point where it's like, all right, we just going to go somewhere. Well, where you going? We're going to go get something to eat. We at the Children's Museum, or we're at Giggly Wiggly's indoor playground, because I can't just entertain her at home. I can't just sit and do puzzles with her all day. Like, I have to do things that I like to do for her. So we're going to go out. We're going to have, lunch dates. So now it's a regular thing, but it took a while for her to kind of let go of those reins and be like, all right, cool. And I'm like, well, listen,
because
she going to be under you all the time, or you going to let us figure this thing out? And we figured it out.
Okay. Well, that's scary.
I mean, it is. It is.
It's scary for moms. It's scary for dads. Everybody's just afraid and scared to death, honey, in this childbirth thing.
But look at it from our perspective. Again, we can't, you can't win for losing. Right? Like, I need you, but I want you to do it how I want you to do it.
Right.
What if that's not my skill set?
What I'm hearing is everyone being flexible enough, but also trusting each other's judgment.
Grace.
And granting each other grace in this area or a space that neither of us have been in before.
Exactly. And it's an area of growth. So again, in every aspect, I always talk about extending grace. Only that way can you allow growth, understanding, conversation, dialogue to help move towards the right destination. Because at the end of the day, we have the same goal. If not, we need to have a conversation. We have a little human. We just need to make them a good person. How do we do that?
Okay. So how do dads navigate feelings of feeling overwhelmed, feeling stretched out, feeling ignored, feeling like they don't matter? Because
how do they or how should they?
Both.
I think you just deal with it. And ironically, I would go to say, and I don't have the stats with me right now because but it's like, I'd be remiss not to say that like a lot of issues that men get in older age are a byproduct of unprocessed emotion, right? Ulcers and, intestinal issues, heart issues, dieting, bad health, bad practices, right? Body breaking down, even as a byproduct of mindset. I just work and work and work until I break down. What's any good in that, right? And so again, we go through the process of just doing what's expected of us and not knowing, again, having a language to verbalize. Should that be the case? No. You need me to be at my best so I can be there for you. And so even in regards to now we're having a second child, I sat and I had a conversation with my wife and I'm like, listen, I know some of this weight you cannot bear. It's okay. But I just don't need you stressing out about things that are not here. Right? Like I start taking hold of maintaining a mental state of sanctity in our household. We have in peace. Anybody that disrupting that, you're getting too loud on the phone. It sounds like you're getting upset. You need to hang up that phone. We need to take a break. Because I need to, that's the one thing I can do is I don't want you stressing out my child before he gets here. So
then what do dads do though?
What should dads do is why I think this is vital, especially when you're getting to the point of bearing, having a kid, is what does that mean? Whether it's having conversation with your parents. I'm a big proponent on that. Before I got married, Dad, I don't know how to be a husband. Can you tell me? Dad, I don't know how to be a father. Can you tell me what that looks like, what that is? And even he said, my brother was a better suggestion. But going to different spaces. I think also being allowed to have adult conversations would also let you know the basis behind why your parents did what you did and why you might need to change that. So I think starting with that, especially you're dealing with family dynamics, right? I think, and I don't know if it's a cultural thing, we're not allowed to have adult conversations with our parents after a certain age. And I think at least at 30, we need to have that. Y'all got divorced. What happened? I don't want any, what was the nature of what happened in your relationship so I can look at certain things. What was it like, even when parents give insight about parenting, right? You had a whole village, but yeah, you trying to make it seem like we struggling because our village ain't here. Are you mindful of that? And then seeking counseling. And not necessarily to identify a diagnosis. And even myself, I don't like pushing a diagnosis. For me, it's arbitrary if you have anxiety or depression or whatever. The expectation is you have these things and you work to be the best version of yourself. So if that's an obstacle, work within that. But you still got to do the work. But I think it's going and speak to somebody to see what barriers could affect you emotionally too.
Okay. So what advice would you give to a dad who feels the things, right? He's feeling all the stressors of fatherhood, providing for his household, but he's stressed out and he's sad, but he's mad and he's unfulfilled. He's looking for things that he can't have right now from his partner, from his wife. What advice would you give dads that feel kind of overwhelmed or unseen?
I mean, I think speak to someone and just find someone that can hold space for you. Because ultimately that's what I do as a therapist. It's not any, navigating you in any direction. I hold space for you. sit and talk, let's have a dialogue, and let's navigate these things. Sometimes reframing to you, and then you're able to identify some of those blind spots that you didn't know you had yourself. So I think it's just anything, we just need to make seeking counseling a more normal aspect of things so that we can kind of navigate these things, just become better versions of ourselves. Now, is that hard? Yeah, finding male clinicians is, a bit scarce. Finding black male clinicians, I think we make up like 4% of the population. But the thing is, like, for men in general, even when I worked in healthcare, we only wait until we break down. We're not about preventive care. And I think that's why us married men tend to live longer, because the wife, you need to go, but men naturally are not necessarily going and seeking care. So I think also, in, re-educating and reframing health around men, this needs to be something that becomes routine, right? So, hit
definitely
40, 50.
When you haven't, especially when you have dads who did not have a father or no male, prominent male role figures in their families, and single parent households, they don't have the tools they need to navigate feelings and emotions.
For sure. And then I see that in a lot of my young boys, especially in single mother households. And I've heard a weird dynamic in which mothers are doing things to try to make them men. What does that look like? Right? So either being overly, disciplinary, not very complimentary. Even some of the friend of mine's in another podcast pointed out of how, like, someone has a byproduct of post-traumatic slave syndrome. So, like, the mother that, goes to the school and the teachers is like, he's smart in all these areas, but she'll be like, well, nah, he's lazy. He don't get up. Because why? They didn't want you to talk too highly of your kid, because there's a point in time when your kid was too skillful, they would take him from you.
Wow.
And I didn't realize how much those things, trickled down to that sense of mindset. So even amongst my my single mothers, when they come to me, they emphasize, like, I just need a positive male influence in their life to help them understand what manhood is, and it's doing so from a modeling standpoint.
Wow.
And so I think that goes both ways, right? Like, understanding your background, unpacking some of these things. How did being having a single parent affect you? For myself, between dealing with homelessness, addiction, it all played a role in how I interact and engage with people and who I am, right? But it took time for me to kind of sit with that and address that. A part of my education was even trying to understand myself more honestly. I wrote a lot of papers on myself. Like, I had a teacher like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, it's cool, but I just need to figure those things out. And so being knowledgeable of these things and start unpacking your trauma. And especially, black folks, I think is ingrained, within our DNA.
Absolutely.
So it's essential because whether it's not knowing how to consciously care for a child or how to manage your emotions, because children are frustrating, right? They're annoying. They can be annoying.
Yes,
right? Nagging, navigating, all the things, right? And if I blow up on you as a young person that's still trying to understand the world, I did you a disjustice, because then you didn't go do that. So I think at the very least, go 1 or 2 sessions just to sort your ish out. Like, what's really going on? What's something that you never acknowledge? What are your blind spots?
So we're very family centered at Birth by Grace Midwifery. Like, you come in, you feel included, hopefully, in your care, right? But I can tell you that we see so many dads that are battling something, be it outwardly or be it very internal, and so we're really passionate about being able to have resources, because we're not therapists. Okay? Like, we're going to sit here and listen to you, but at the end of that thing, honey, I don't know where to steer you, where to, lead you to for help.
Exactly.
But it's so real. We deal with real issues, real families, real people with real feelings. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I wanted you to come on here as a dad, to just really, encourage other fathers to seek what they need as well from an emotional standpoint, because of course, the mom is centered in the care. But once that's a whole process and a whole situation.
So
that everyone is involved in.
I sought out counseling. I had emotional breakdown over something minor, and I I don't know if I mentioned it, like, and I just laugh at where I'm at emotionally is much different than where I was before I had a kid. And I don't know if it's, having a daughter or not, but I'm like, I'm watching The Shy and I'm sitting there crying over scenes. And I'm like, wait, this is not, not what I do. Not necessarily anything wrong with it, but like even my own personal struggles of expressing emotion in that way has been hard for me. My wife has only ever seen me cry once in 12 years. And it's not because I'm trying to be the most, I'm not a macho, man. I'm just a regular guy. Like, and so I can say from firsthand experience, like things change, things shift. We're also getting older. I'm pretty sure at them testosterone commercials be hitting a little bit different when you approaching 40, talking about, oh, maybe I need some testosterone. Like, so just doing the internal work and then seeking those resources. And I think the first place to start is, again, Psychology Today. Clinicians of Color is a great one.
Well, if they're in Atlanta, they can call you.
Yes, most definitely. Elevated Genius Solutions.
ElevatedGeniusSolutions.com.
And what I like to do is, because I do see adults, but they come and they go, which I don't mind at all.
Sure.
I don't want to hold you hostage. And ironically, part of the stigma with Black folks specifically in mental health is that I remember having a lot of conversations about like, well, if you're not just making them sick, how you going to earn money? I'm like, there's enough people dealing with like stress that won't have a problem. But the mindset is that I'm going to go there fine and you're going to give me something. And y'all medically, right? Between C experiments, like how do I know you're not going to give me a syphilis blanket when I get there, right? And irrational, that's how a lot of men think. And so it's also the mindset. So I want to offer like a number of 5 sessions for a reasonable price. I don't set that. I want it to be the individual so that we kind of sort these things and you can see or we identify some of your blind spots. I say, hold on, just let me hold space for you. Talk, express what's been going on, reflect. Because again, a lot of people speak their issues, but they don't process them.
Got it.
Processing them is different than talking about them. I think that's why it's different than when you go to your friends and you talk about your problems. A, your friends always want to fix it. B, they don't always give the best advice because they have an immediate bias, right?
Correct.
You're my friend, so I'm on your side. Get rid of them regardless.
And then they haven't had any experience either.
At all. In knowing and having a person that professionally knows how to ask questions, probe, you know what I'm saying? Like, read between the lines, I think is essential. And so I've had guys that come to me and after those number of sessions, they're like, okay, I'm good. It was a situational stressor. But they didn't leave. It was like, well, now I have depression. Now do I need medication? Or now I have anxiety. I don't like doing that, especially for men. I know the stigma that exists. I know what comes with it. Just come sit, let me hold space for you. Let's navigate some of these things, especially in regards to bearing a child. What does that look like to you? What does that mean to you? What conversations are you having?
Without you feeling like you're soft or weak or any of those things that society would tell you are.
For fact. I'll keep it a buck that a lot of my security in my masculinity is when I worked in HIV with men that had HIV, that were gay men. It changed my whole perspective. Because it's like, oh, so it's not about preference. Like, no, how they conduct themselves, the principles they had is what made them masculine, not their preferences, how they present themselves, whatever the case might have been. And so I think for a man, if you're letting someone else define what is masculine to you, then you need to come see me because you need to define that for yourself. You need to retake ownership. If you're a man and questioning that, if I express my emotion, right? If we're put here to be fruitful and multiply, right? And if the stigma is women are emotional beings and you're not emotional in tune, how are you really showing up for your woman? You know what I'm saying? There's so many ways you can spin it. You just need to get it. Whether it's just lacking intimacy, well, now you need to get out of some of that emotional blockage. If you can't get in tune with yourself to get in tune with your partner, there's an issue there, right? If you, again, are just only, I'm going to do what my parents did, while resentful towards your parents, you don't talk to your father, you don't like your mother, you moved out at 16, not because you had to, because you wanted to get away from them, but you're going to do what they did, something's wrong.
ElevatedGenius.com.
Elevated Genius Solutions.
ElevatedGeniusSolutions.com. Dads, it is time for you to get your minds right as well, okay? Because we need you in these childbirth streets, honey. We need dads to show up fully as their full, healthy selves in their mind, bodies, and spirits. Okay? So therapy is sexy, honey. Dad therapy is sexy, okay? It's not weak. It's not less than. It's not any of the things that society is going to try to put on you for doing those things, right?
Yeah.
Seek help. Seek help.
And
Okay?
also, I do
Please do.
unorthodox. So Yes. I don't like if it's over coffee, lunch. Recently, I'm looking at hosting the game night at Hooters. So if that doesn't make you feel more masculine, we could talk about man feelings at Hooters, playing video games. I don't know what it is, but feelings is masculine. Feelings are gangster. Feelings are hard. Feelings are dope. And I think when you're emotionally in tuned, that's more important than anything. And that's where I want to get all my young guys. It's like emotions aren't a bad thing. It's how you manage them and navigate them. And I had to teach them, and a lot of times what defines a man is not the things that we do to act out masculinity. It's how we act, operate in with strength. The things that we don't do. The passes that we give, the times that we don't react, I think are more of a sign of masculinity then. And the only way you can do that is that you have control and mastery over your feelings and emotions and are seeking the resources necessary to get that if you don't.
I like that. Mastering your feelings and emotions.
Elevating your genius through mental
Elevating your genius.
Through mental emotional well-being.
Johnny Alexander. BBG Dad.
Facts. And we're almost there too.
Yes, we are. I can't wait. I'm excited.
I can. I remember the last time. Who gonna carry that bowl? We gotta get the water.
Listen, we are ready. You better get ready.
Snacks. We getting our walking in. She already talking about doing headstands. We not playing with Miss Dawn this year.
Hey.
Not at all. And she ain't got nowhere to run either.
Y'all. Thank you for tuning in to the Birth Exchange podcast. This is Midwife Christine, and we are out.